Hey YouTube, it's the Frog Queen here, and today I'm going to be talking about a new book coming out from Humanoids Incorporated called The Ring of the Seven Worlds. This is a new original graphic novel from Humanoids. The writer is Giovanni, correct me, I might be saying this wrong, Gialdoni, and Gabriel Klima. Wow. Because all of these Humanoids books are generally translated from other languages like Italian and Spanish and French, I have a terrible time trying to say them, but I'm trying to do my best. Bear with me. Art, however, is by Matteo Piana, and art is what actually drew my attention to this particular book. So, The Ring of the Seven Worlds is an extremely ambitious story with a mix of sci-fi and fantasy in a Miyazakiesque world. Also, it's really aimed at people who love steampunk, in my opinion. I want to be able to explain to you just how the world actually works in this story, but it's so complicated. I couldn't even break it down. You have to actually open the book, look at this map, kind of figure out where things are, but it's almost as if this planet has different dimensions, has different levels, and the story centers on one portion, which is above ground. Everything's been elevated off of the ground, and then there's this whole different kind of underworld of people that live on top of the planet, and then there's people that live under the planet. That is the best way I can describe it without getting too confusing and without spoiling some plot points. The story centers on two young people. If I had to guess their ages, I'd say they're about, pre-puberty, just on the cusp of puberty. It sort of gets a little bit coming-of-age story-esque, but really there's a big war going on, and there's battles and things like that, like most sci-fi steampunk kind of stories. So we see these two characters that are thrust together because of circumstances, and that's the basic people that we follow. This one little boy and this one little girl, which is fine. The story does appear to be very all ages, except for a couple things like this. Yeah, I saw a phallic. Did you see a penis? Because I saw a penis, and I don't know how kid-friendly that is. It could be kind of like this. Anyway, moving on. A few things I wanted to mention about the writing. There's too much information given right away in the dialogue. So I feel like this whole story would benefit more from the addition of a narrator as opposed to just having this scripting. It's just my personal hatred for this type of storytelling. This is entirely opinion. It doesn't make the book bad. It just makes it less appealing to me personally. I'm a big fan of show, don't tell, within comics, and yes, within television as well. The first 30 pages of the book are explaining the characters' circumstances rather than giving the audience a story. And so the immediate feeling I get is just force. I feel the information is being forced on me rather than being organically absorbed through the events, trials, and tribulations that the characters experience and endure. All of this kind of forced character information and history leave very, very little room for actually natural dialogue, and it makes the characters feel very empty and hollow. Thus, it just all comes off very unnatural. The story does start to carry on more naturally after the first 30 pages or so, and then the dynamics between the characters begin to appear, and you kind of get absorbed in the story. Finally! That's when the story gets engaging, and you can stop digesting information because you're just being force-fed a lot of character information. There's a lot of characters in this book, and that's kind of the other problem. That's what makes it feel so ambitious. Not only do you have this huge world that has a very complicated kind of idea behind it, you also have a huge political situation you have to wrap your head around, and you have these multitude of characters that are constantly being introduced to you, constantly you're trying to absorb their history and get a sense of who they are. It's just so ambitious. I feel like perhaps the story from head to toe is rushed. So to address my statement earlier about how I said it was kind of Miyazaki-esque, the way I see this as being a very Miyazaki-esque story is because it contains that prevalent theme of nature versus man. And this story is no different, as the inhabited world here was once a rich land that became consumed by desert, as Timo, that's one of our main characters, the young boy, he explains this on page 70 actually, that the current metropolis had retreated above the desert to live and survive by foraging in the waste, which is the ground level of the planet. They would forage for technology below, which was discarded by previous generations, and he implies that the throwing away of technology and swapping it for new was a standard way of living, and that's what contributed to the desolation of the planet. Sound familiar? Sounds exactly like what we're doing right now. Fancy that. But this whole idea of the Earth becoming a big desert is something that Miyazaki had done previously, and other people have as well. But you'll remember this from Nausicaa and the Valley of the Wind. And of course, Miyazaki constantly has this nature versus man versus nature. Basically, man fucking over our planet constantly and paying the consequences of it, as well as all the animals on the planet. As far as the actual artwork goes, which was what originally drew me to the story, it's gorgeous. There are beautiful displays. The character design is really intricate, really interesting. It's very, I would want to say child-friendly in that way, because the big eyes, the very expressive faces on all the characters, the color palette's beautiful. There's a lot of pastels. There's a lot of these like deep purple colors, and the architecture, with the exception of the penis tower, the architecture is particularly nice. All in all, I think it's a good book. I can understand why Humanoids has chosen to publish it. They always have a really good taste in books. Everything they publish pretty much is of a higher caliber than I would see in another publisher. For instance, you're not going to see something like this from, I don't know, Marvel. You just won't. Maybe from Magnetic Press. This is kind of the type of book that I would see Magnetic Press doing, because it does have that sort of French animation feel that I kind of got used to when I was reading so many Magnetic Press books. Anyways, I'm going to tell you more about Magnetic Press another day, because I've read most of their books that they've ever published, and there's a lot of fantastic ones. But for now, I suggest you check this one out, and it will be available on the 24th of January, which is right next week. So you can look for it then. Be sure to order from your comic book store and not online. You will not be able to get it online through something like, say, Amazon for another few weeks. They always get everything later. And you want to support your local comic book shop. All right, so until next time, read something good. Bye.